Greetings and welcome back to the World Numismatic News as we now take a look at Lincoln cent varieties that you can search for from 1955. Now, 1955 has a number of attractive varieties to look for, starting at the more minor varieties and then working our way up to the glaringly obvious. Here is a repunched mint mark variety from the San Francisco Mint, and in actuality it is a triple punched mint mark variety, rather easily identified by the initial and secondary impressions that can be seen towards the top of the S mint mark. There are also impressions of the lower serif of the S inside the lower cavity of the S. Now, in a lower dye state, the initial and secondary impressions do begin to fade to a certain degree. Curiously, the impressions inside the cavity of the S seem to be the first to go, although even in a lower grade and lower dye states, you still see a remnant of the secondary impression to the top of the S and to the northeast of the lower serif of the coin as well. Now, there seems to have been at least two reverse dyes paired with this obverse variety, and in a later dye state of the first marriage is identified by a small dye chip inside the lines of the left wheat stalk. In 2025, a PCGS graded example of this coin was sold at auction with the grade of MS66 red for the sum of $166. Now, the second repunched mint mark variety to keep an eye out for is found on the Denver Mint coin. This is a widely spaced D over D variety where the initial D mint mark was placed far to the east of the final position. On most coins, you should see the rounding of the initial D placement significantly, but directly towards the right of the D mint mark. In addition to this, the upright or vertical position of the original placement of the D can then also still be seen inside the cavity of the final D mint mark, as seen here. Now, in a later dye state, you can see that the identification of the variety becomes somewhat more nebulous, as the rounding towards the east can fade or disappear altogether. But in this case, the upright bar of the initial D inside the cavity of the actual mint mark will still remain present, as it is now placed in a protected area of the design. A good place to quickly tell the dye state of the coin that you have is to look at the topmost right portion of the N in cent on the reverse of this coin. In an earlier dye state, it will appear largely as you would expect, but in later dye state coins, it gets worn away and damaged. During 2022, an MS66 red example of this variety was sold at auction in an NGC slab for the amount of $261. And then for our first doubled obverse coin from 1955, and the last coin from the Denver Mint for this year, even though this coin might not be as dramatic as some of the coins we're about to look at in just a bit, it is still a very good variety. For this coin, look towards the date where the doubling remains the most obvious. Pay particular attention to the 1 and the 9 of the date. Both numbers are doubled towards the south-southwest slightly, with the doubling seen best on the left side of the 1, and to the bottom of the top rounding of the 9 as well. And then another place to see good doubling on this coin is directly towards the east of Lincoln's eye, where his entire eye and eyelid is doubled completely. If you have a coin in a later dye state, then the doubling on the eye may not be as easy to spot, although it remains present, but the doubling on the date should still be quite strong regardless. For this coin, we had an example graded as MS64 red from PCGS that was sold at auction in 2024 for the sum of $1,080. Now, from there, we move over to the Philadelphia Mint, but first we look at the only proof variety to be of any real market interest from this date. This is also an interesting coin as it is simultaneously a doubled obverse and a reverse variety coin at the same time. The doubling on the obverse is definitely the slightest, with minor doubling seen on the letters of Liberty and In God We Trust. But the date is the place where you want to focus your attention here, as the doubling is the clearest. Almost all the numbers are doubled to at least some degree towards the southeast, with the tail of the 9 and the 2 5s displaying it the best. Oh, and I should probably also mention that on this variety there is also a little diagonal die gouge on Lincoln's lapel, or, well, technically I suppose the collar of his jacket. In addition to that, as mentioned, the reverse is also doubled. The letters of E pluribus unum are doubled mostly towards the south, displaying additional thickness to the bottom of the letters as a result. Although some letters do display the doubling better than others, like the various U's as well as the E and L of pluribus. The dots separating the words are also doubled beautifully and should not be overlooked. You can also notice the effects of the doubling towards the top of the letters of 1 cent, where clear separation lines appear. In terms of market value, the coin can be quite valuable, and in 2025, a Proof 68 red example from PCGS was sold at auction for $3,102. Our next coin is a doubled obverse variety from 1955. Not the extremely famous one, which we'll get to in just a minute, but this coin actually displays attractive doubling in its own right. Here there is a minor doubling on the tail of the 5s in the date, as well as some more pronounced but still sporadic doubling on the letters of Liberty, most displaying towards the top in a northwesterly direction, with some fair separation lines towards the top of the central letters of the word as well. However, the best doubling on this coin is seen on the letters of In God We Trust, where the doubling displays in a northeasterly direction relative towards the letters in question. Now, the spread on the doubling is fairly strong, but the initial impression seems to have been incomplete or at least somewhat weak, which then leads us to the biggest problem for this variety, in that a later die-state coin, the doubling becomes indistinct. And admittedly, the coin on the left of your screen is a bit of an extreme example, but serves as a good demonstration of what can happen. As you can see that there is still doubling, but a lot of it has become very blurry or washed out. During 2024, a PCGS graded coin with a grade of MS65 red was sold at auction for the amount of $864. And then we get to undeniably the most famous coin for the date, and arguably for the series as a whole as well, the main FS 101 1955 double die obverse cent. Here you have one of the best examples of rotated hub doubling with the widest spread between squeezings, where every aspect of the design is affected. The date is naturally the most prominent feature and has become the variety coin's hallmark. The letters of Liberty are all also doubled quite dramatically as well, with the doubling becoming stronger, which is to say that the spread becomes wider nearer to the edge of the coin. And then the letters of In God We Trust are also doubled widely towards the right, with every single letter appearing twice in a dizzying effect. In 2025, a PCGS graded MS65 plus red example of this popular variety coin was sold at auction for the sum of $320,625. Now, for the sake of completeness, I feel I should also address one more fringe case. Occasionally, you might come across a coin that looks a little something like this. This is what is known as a poor man's double die, 1955 cent. It is in fact not doubling. It is not a true variety coin either. What is happening here is a normal coin in a very late die state that is displaying die deterioration around the date. That's it. Now, the curiosity is that because of its proximal association to, for better or worse, with the true variety coins that we have already looked at here, it actually has some market value and attracts a small premium for collectors looking for an oddity or to use it as a filler coin in lieu of, the real thing. Oftentimes, but not always, you'll also see these coins with severe die cracks across Lincoln's head. In most cases, a coin like this would sell for, anywhere between $5 and $20 depending on the grade. Although I've also seen them selling for significantly higher prices as well. Subscribe to WNN and feel free to watch another video about the 1954 Lincoln cent variety that you can look for right here. Next. For the World Numismatic News, I am Numisman saying thank you for watching, keep collecting, and have a fantastic day.